Israel is plotting another war with Iran and to resume its genocidal onslaught against the people of Gaza. Now, Israel's propaganda machine is ratcheting up to lay the foundations for an onslaught against both. Israel, of course, went to war with Iran last June, killed hundreds of Iranians, committed all sorts of heinous war crimes. Now, NBC News carries a report, which I'm just going to say it's just regurgitated Israeli propaganda. It's just Israeli briefings with, let's just say, minimal uh, critical journalism, interrogation of what's discussed. I mean, there really is very little subtlety here. I'm just going to read out some of this. You'll see what I mean. Israeli officials have grown increasingly concerned that Iran is expanding production of its ballistic missile program, which was damaged by Israeli military strikes earlier this year, and are preparing to brief President Donald Trump about options for attacking it again, according to a person with direct knowledge of the plans and four former US officials briefed on the plans. Yeah, I can see how this is all panned out. All very spontaneous stuff, nothing coordinated. Israeli officials are also concerned that Iran is reconstituting nuclear enrichment sites the US bombed in June, the sources said, but they added the officials view Iran's efforts to rebuild facilities where they produce ballistic missiles and to repair its crippled air defense systems as more immediate concerns. It notes the reports Trump and Netanyahu are going to meet in Florida later this month, and Netanyahu is going to make the case that Israel's expansion of its ballistic missile program poses a threat that could necessitate swift action. Oh, I bet Netanyahu is going to make that case. Yeah, I'm sure that's just popped up in his head. He thought, "Oh, do you know, while I'm there, might as well just check in with big dog Trump about a couple of concerns I have about Iran, just to discuss what's on my mind." It goes on, left unchecked, Iran's production of ballistic missiles could increase to as many as 3,000 per year, according to the person with direct knowledge of Israel's plans and former US officials briefed on the plans. Just regurgitating Israeli propaganda. They might as well just get press releases from Mossad. It's quite funny, actually. It's actually got a correction at the end of it, because it originally said that Iran could be producing 3,000 ballistic missiles a month, which was supposed to be a year. Maybe a slightly overexcited official trying to lay it on a little bit too thick there. Now, according to the news outlet Axios, Israeli officials warned the Trump administration over the weekend that Iranian Revolutionary Guard Corps missile exercise could be preparations for a strike at Israel. Again, multiple sources discussing this with them. One source said Israeli intelligence raised similar concerns 6 weeks ago after it identified Iranian missile movements, but nothing came of it. Ooh, better be careful there, Israeli intelligence officials, in terms of the boy that cried wolf a little too many times. There are enough gullible and receptive people, unfortunately, alas, in the US military and political establishment. However, what was buried in this report is US intelligence currently has no indication an Iranian attack is imminent, an American source told Axios. So even US intelligence isn't buying this bullshit. This is obviously, again, coordinated by Israel and partly using client media sources to make the case for a resumption of an onslaught against Iran. I mean, it goes on. The sources said the biggest risk is a war between Israel and Iran will break out as a result of a miscalculation with each side thinking the other plans to attack and try to preempt it. Well, of course, that would be very convenient for Israel, wouldn't it? To go, well, I mean, that's the whole point, isn't it? They're going to go, well, they were imminently going to attack us, so we had to, we're not going on the offensive here. This is defensive. Because our intelligence tells us that we're about to be attacked, so we're getting in there first. I mean, that's clearly what's going on here. Now, as I said, Netanyahu is meeting Trump on the 29th of December in order to prepare the ground for war, to try and convince Trump, who stood, of course, as the man who was going to end all the endless wars. He stood as a peacenik. And when I went to Donald Trump rallies in the Rust Belt last October, November, Trump supporters were buying that. They saw him as the peace candidate. He's going to end the eternal wars. Well, I mean, from Venezuela to Iran, doesn't quite look that way, does it? As Sina Tusi, the analyst for the Center for International Policy, puts it, for Donald Trump, Iran's nuclear program was the core dispute, and by repeatedly declaring it obliterated, he has politically closed the nuclear file and removed Israel's traditional justification for US backing of war with Iran. But this matters because once nuclear rationale is taken off the table, Netanyahu loses the most important argument he has historically used to mobilize American political and military support. That's true because Netanyahu, if you go back to the early 90s, he was making the case that Iran was imminently going to get a nuclear weapon in order to justify a military onslaught against Iran. That's the case he's always made over and over again. Unfortunately, he has expended that particular case. I'm not sure that grammatically makes sense, but you get the point. Netanyahu's emphasis on Iran's ballistic missile program now should therefore be read not as a discovery of a new threat, but as a strategic attempt to manufacture a replacement casus belli after nuclear argument collapsed. The timing's not accidental. This missile push comes as the US's top regional priorities advancing to the second phase of the Gaza ceasefire, not opening a new front with Iran. So that's the point. Netanyahu's lost his original argument, so now he's moved on to ballistic missiles. That's the gist. According to Mohammed Ali Shabani, who's editor of Amwaj Media, there's not a single credible analyst in Tehran who expects a preemptive Iranian attack on Israel. The way Israel keeps moving goalposts for action, nuclear missile, Sydney attack, IRGC exercises, suggests flimsy attempt to build narrative for another attack on Iran. I mean, the Sydney attack, the Bondi Beach massacre, the anti-Semitic attack on Jewish Australians, Israel trying to suggest Iran was behind that. ISIS are Sunni aligned militants. Obviously, they're not actually representative of Sunni Islam and are heretical. But they are, ISIS are a viciously anti-Shia militant group. Iran, of course, is a Shia nation. And ISIS and the Islamic Republic of Iran are mortal enemies. So that really was desperate. Now, the Republican Senator Lindsey Graham, who is a hawkish warmonger, who is extremely well connected with the Israeli state, went on Israeli television in order to make this case, obviously trying to lay the foundations himself for another onslaught against Iran.
The risk that the ballistic missiles present to Israel and eventually to the region. We need to replenish your supply of air defense capability, but we cannot allow Iran to get back in the ballistic missile production business that could overwhelm Iron Dome.
Now, what of Gaza, which was reduced to apocalyptic rubble by Israel's 2-year genocidal onslaught? There is no ceasefire in place. And media organizations which say there's a ceasefire are simply displaying their brazen anti-Palestinian racism. Because given the number of Palestinians who are being murdered, how could it be a ceasefire if you saw Palestinians as humans? If the number of a fraction of Israelis had been killed as Palestinians had been killed, no media organization would be calling it a ceasefire. As others have pointed out, Israel's definition of ceasefire is you cease, we fire. They continue to slaughter Palestinians, many of them children, including an attack on a school where a wedding was taking place, relentless military attacks in Gaza. They continue to prevent aid from entering. And although famine status has been removed from Gaza, people are still desperately hungry and lacking in basic life essentials. I mean, for example, the medical system has been destroyed. Babies are freezing to death in Gaza as winter obviously envelops the strip. Now, according to a new study, brilliant study which appears in Dropsite News, who do incredible journalism, and Forensic Architecture, again, a group of experts who have done really, truly astonishing work actually on Israel's genocide. They've looked at how Israel is consolidating control on the over 50% of Gaza its forces are directly occupying. They're building military infrastructure, destroying existing buildings. As the report notes, Israel appears to be laying the groundwork to establish a permanent presence in the majority of the Gaza Strip. They've built 13 new military outposts inside Gaza. They've accelerated the growth and infrastructure development of 48 existing military outposts inside Gaza. And they've expanded the network of roads connecting military outposts there in the Gaza Strip to the Israeli road network bases, settlements outside of Gaza. And according to the Wall Street Journal, Jared Kushner, who's of course Donald Trump's son-in-law, Steve Witkoff, who's his Middle East envoy, they're pitching on behalf of the Trump administration to foreign governments and investors to turn Gaza's rubble into a futuristic coastal destination. It reports in 32 pages of PowerPoint slides, replete with images of coastal high-rises alongside charts and cost tables. The plan outlines steps to take Gaza residents from tents to penthouses and from poverty to prosperity. The presentation is labeled sensitive but unclassified and doesn't go into detail about which countries or companies would fund Gaza's rebuilding, nor does it specify where precisely the 2 million displaced Palestinians would live during Reconstruction. The US has shown the slides to prospective donor countries, such as wealthy Gulf kingdoms, Turkey, Egypt. And some US officials who've reviewed the plan have serious doubts about how realistic it is. They are skeptical that Hamas would agree to disarm in the first place for the plan to take effect, and even then, that the US could convince wealthy nations to foot the bill for transforming a dangerous post-war environment to a a high-tech cityscape. It noting the apocalyptic wasteland, the weapons that have been exploded, the thousands of Palestinian bodies buried under rubble. Toxic wasteland. What's clearly going on here? We know because it's not subtle. Because Donald Trump, remember the video he did a year ago, or less than a year ago, which was an AI-generated video of Gaza turned into some, bougie billionaire's playground, a resort. They haven't given up on their plan. It says there about Gaza residents being housed now in this futuristic city. That's not the ambition. They want to remove the population of Gaza. That's what they want to do. When it's unclear where Gaza's population would go during Reconstruction, because it's an unlivable place. The idea of the amount of resources it would take to go in and remove all the rubble to build things in of itself. What's going to happen at some point, I think it's quite strikingly obvious, is the surviving population will be removed on humanitarian grounds. They've already opened up the crossing for people, Palestinians, to leave, but it's been made clear they won't be able to return. So, the removal of the surviving population clearly remains on the agenda. And at the same time, grounds are being prepared to resume Israel's genocidal onslaught against the people of Gaza who are living in unbearable conditions. Again, Lindsey Graham, Republican senator, listen to what he has to say about this, because he's not just speaking on behalf of himself.
So it's imperative we come up with a plan quickly, put Hamas on a time clock, give them a period of time to achieve the goal of disarmament. And if you don't, I would encourage President Trump to unleash Israel to go finish off Hamas. 90 days after the ceasefire, they're consolidating power in Gaza. They're not giving it up. This is a problem. I do not believe it's possible to have a good outcome in Gaza with Hamas still armed.
Now, as the brilliant Palestinian analyst Mohammed Shahada puts it, in Hebrew, Israel admits Hamas is not rearming and does not even have the ability to produce rockets and RPGs. In English, Israel keeps falsely claiming that Hamas is rebuilding its arsenal of what? And that Israel needs to resume military operations, i.e. genocide in Gaza. And to just underline that point, he chose a screenshot from the Israeli television station N12 based on IDF security sources, making it clear that Hamas are not indeed able to produce these sophisticated weapons. And he goes on in direct response to Lindsey Graham to say Hamas is not consolidating power. They've agreed to hand over government in Gaza to a technocratic committee and police force trained in Egypt and Jordan. Netanyahu refuses to let that police force into Gaza and hasn't approved the 8 names of the committee leaders for 70 days. In other words, Bibi wants Hamas to stay in power. Even the International Stabilization Force, after Azerbaijan said it was willing to join, Israel prompted asking the Azeris to not send any troops. The other country that offered to join the ISF, Turkey, was outright vetoed by Netanyahu. Indonesia say they can only join ISF if Turkey is in to give them legitimacy. Netanyahu has also been insisting that ISF be a subcontractor of the Israeli army and an occupying force in Gaza that uses military violence to suppress Palestinians, which led every single country around the world to refrain from sending troops and be explicitly complicit in genocide. This way, Netanyahu can say, as long as no one is joining ISF, the Israeli army will stay in Gaza indefinitely, and as long as Hamas is not handing over government, to who Israel will not move to phase 2. It's just obvious, of course, what's happening here, which is Israel is playing for time, dragging it out. They quite understandably believe that Donald Trump's attention span is limited and that he is impatient and will just, in the end, decide he cannot be bothered with any of this and continue with their plan, which is to finalize their genocidal onslaught. And the genocide hasn't ended. They have made Gaza an unlivable place, and they continue to make it an unlivable, unbearable place. They don't want Palestinians to remain in Gaza. I mean, they've made that abundantly clear over and over again. And all they're doing with the so-called peace plan is just to drag it all out and make it unworkable in practice. So I think we should just be very clear about what's happening as we end this year, another year of horror and mayhem. But I think, because this is, I think, our last video of the year, although I'm like, if something happens, I might interview various people as and when. But I think there was hope this year. I think we need to remember that, because we've seen, for example, whether it be in Britain, the surge of the Green Party under Zach Polanski. We saw in New York the election of Zoran Mandani, who will become mayor of New York in the new year. That part of that has been because people across the West have been politicized by watching their governments be complicit in the genocide. That is definitely a big factor in both of those, by the way. There's also, of course, the economic system being rigged in favor of elites and against the interest of the majority. That's no consolation to the Palestinian people. I mean, their genocide should not be a teachable lesson. We shouldn't need a genocide of the Palestinians to offer a teachable moment to people in the West. That people have seen too much, heard too much, read too much. They've been changed, and they're going to demand that something profoundly transformational happens in the world in which we live. And what we'll see is Israel's crimes continue, but it's important that now we have so many people like yourselves, who've been politicized, that we harness the energy and prepare ourselves when Israel continues and escalates its heinous crimes. Because people in the West have lost patience with the Israeli state. They understand what the Israeli state is now, and they don't want their governments to be complicit in those crimes. So now, with Israel making it clear what they're going to do, we need to be prepared. So, in any case, I hope you're well. If you celebrate Christmas, happy Christmas. And next year, we've got big plans, because the plan, as I keep saying, is to finish my book, The Fall of the West, which I'm very excited to talk to you more about, and finish that by the end of February, and then it will come out in the autumn, which means I can focus on this channel. But we've kept it ticking along, thanks to you, and thanks for your support. So help us with our exciting new plans in the new year. Patreon.com/Unjust84. You make all of what we do possible. And press like, subscribe, leave your thoughts, your comments, share the video. I'll speak to you in a bit.